Som. Modulou ali, pá? Modulou, né?
Olá,
Oi, Ivan, você tá me ouvindo?
perfeitamente, Vanessa.
Tá bom. Você acha melhor fechar a câmera bem só aqui na mesa?
Pode ser fechar um pouquinho. Só estou vendo algo de halo na lente.
O que que você tá vendo na lente?
Está um pouco opaco.
Ah, tá. Ah, é o problema na lente da câmera mesmo, porque fica muito tempo fechado e aí fica naquelas gotículas, sabe, de umidade, alguma coisa assim, mas tá ruim para enxergar.
Não, acho que
A gente vai aproximar um pouco aqui para ver se fica melhor. Então, peraí, vamos aproximar aqui na câmera.
isso. É, é questão de estética.
Ivan, você está acompanhando? Você acha que está melhor?
Está bastante melhor,
Tá? Ó, Márcio, senta aqui na mesa para o Ivan dar uma olhada em você.
mas a câmera está opaca ainda.
É, aí a câmera agora a gente nem consegue resolver, Ivan. O máximo
Ah,
que eu posso tentar fazer é aproximar mais ainda a mesa, para focar bem aqui no professor. Dá uma olhada.
dá sim. E a câmera, ela é inacessível agora?
É porque ela está instalada e ela fica numa posição muito alta para a gente poder mexer agora. E aí, como eu não sei se é um problema interno na câmera, eu não sei se é só a lente que está suja.
Acho que é a lente só.
A gente já teve esse problema uma outra vez, e aí teve que retirar a câmera e mandar para garantia, porque esse espaço ele é menos utilizado do que os demais. E os outros já estão ocupados com atividades que vão começar daqui a pouquinho, entendeu? E aí, como a
Ah,
gente
entendo.
recebeu uma solicitação muito em cima da hora, não deu para preparar um outro lugar para poder realizar a atividade de hoje,
Muito bem.
tá bom?
Tá bom.
Então pode deixar do jeito que está aqui na tela, do jeito que você está vendo.
Pode sim.
tá ótimo.
E eu consegui deixar a vista do orador. Então, cada vez que ele fala, vai aparecer a imagem dele.
E aí, Ivan,
Olá, tudo bem? Pode começar quando quiser.
quer fazer? Às vezes? I don't think, but... Já tem gente online também, ou Ivan, como é que tá?
Já tem gente online.
Ah,
Já está transmitindo já.
já tá bom. Boa tarde, pessoas. Tudo bem? Eu pensei que não tava transmitindo, já tá online. Ah, e eu dele falar aqui.
Está bastante melhor.
Pessoal, eu vou explicar um pouco a dinâmica da apresentação, enquanto ele, acho que ele ele foi ao toalete, né? Então, hoje ele vai falar. Ele começa, vamos apresentar o Athanasios, ele vai fazer a conferência dele em inglês, e depois a gente vai abrir para perguntas e pedir que vocês se apresentem. Quem são, de onde vêm, qual programa, qual curso, qual é o tema de investigação. Podem contar um pouco isso também para ele saber na sequência de vocês, né? Tá? Dizer qual é o tema de pesquisa de vocês, se for da pós-graduação, ou se é da graduação, tá bom? O pessoal na internet, pode fazer pergunta também, pelo chat, e você transmite para nós, a Ivan e Vitória, vocês ajudam a ver pelo YouTube as perguntas e traduzir para o Athanasios, tá? Acompanhar, e assim a gente vai começando. Bom, ah, antes de mais nada, eu quero dizer que a presença do professor Athanasios Marvakis, da Universidade Aristóteles, em Tessalônica, na Grécia, é resultado de uma parceria com a PUCamp, a PUC Campinas, né? A partir da iniciativa da professora Raquel Guzzo, no doutorado em educação da PUCamp, e ele esteve aqui trabalhando em diversos lugares. Esteve pelo Rio de Janeiro, na Federal do Rio, esteve na Universidade de Brasília, na Universidade Federal de Goiás, e agora está aqui conosco, nesse encontro. Ele vai fazer uma conferência em duas partes, uma parte da discussão é hoje, e a outra na quinta-feira, né? Então, todo mundo que está aqui a gente vai passar um QR Code daqui a pouco aí a gente vai imprimir um corretamente e vai passar um QR Code para vocês fazerem a confirmação, quem ainda não fez, lá na lista, porque a gente vai usar essa lista para emitir certificado para quem veio presencialmente nos 2 dias, né? Então, a gente confirma nos 2 dias para ter o certificado da atividade, né? Podem vir outras pessoas na quinta-feira também, não tem problema, presencialmente. Mas é um pouco para a gente aproveitar a presença física do nosso convidado, né? Um, Athanasios, go? But, for you. Start? Uh, yeah. Okay, this. Tá. Bom, Athanasios é professor de psicologia social na universidade, psicologia clínica. Ele tem trabalhado questões vinculadas à ideia de uma psicologia crítica, que é o que a gente vai discutir, o que significa essa psicologia crítica numa sociedade que é produzida pelo neoliberalismo, né? Então, essa é a grande foco da discussão dele, né? Como que o neoliberalismo ele tem impactado na produção da subjetividade humana, e nas contradições, no próprio processo de adoecimento que a gente tem visto em diversas leituras, desde Marx. O pensamento dele é um pensamento de origem marxista, né? Então é desse lugar que ele constrói a própria concepção de sociedade, de relações humanas, né? Um, é um é uma oportunidade bastante interessante porque a gente vem falar. Ele vem da Europa, mas ele vem da Europa que é marginal, está na margem do que é a Europa, não vem da Alemanha, não vem da França ou da Inglaterra, né? Ele está num país que, do ponto de vista da economia, das grandes crises, é muito parecido com o Brasil, né? Athanasios, ele se formou na Alemanha, né? E como doutorado, né? E tem trabalhado, então, nesse momento na Universidade de Tessalônica, né? Esse ano, então, ele está num sabático, dando um giro por aqui, pelo Brasil, nesse pool de universidades que eu contei para vocês, tá bom? Então, Athanasios, welcome to EASH e... Go.
Hello, olá, gente. Hello. Bom dia. I'm very happy to be here. It's my last city in my second tour to Brazil, and yes, I'm today here, tomorrow in PUC, Sao Paulo, and on next Monday on USP, but psychology department. Yeah, so I didn't understood all of Alessandro said about me. So I'm not sure if, so I may say a few words about my background, so to be sure that because I didn't understood everything what he said. As a person, personally, I actually I grew up in Germany. Not only, as I understood him, I did not only study in Germany. I grew up in Germany because my parents were immigrants, going from Greece to Germany as immigrants, and we children followed them because of the military coup d'état in Greece. Not only in Brasilia. It was yesterday the anniversary of the Brazilian coup d'état in Greece in 1967. We had also military junta, and this was problematic. So we children had also to leave Greece, and so this was for us children very good, because my father was in the guerrilla, fighting the Germans in the guerrilla, and he was very patriotic. So he would never leave Greece. But which means we would live in Greece in very poor conditions. So we children were very lucky, and talking together with my sister, we're very lucky that the political government forced my parents to leave and also take us with them. So this was a chance for us to get a better living conditions and also education, which was not it would not be easy for us with these parents and this political background to have a good education in Greece. So we are lucky to study. And so this means also my academic language is German. I moved to Greece after finishing university and PhD and looking around for work. And it was at that time it was almost impossible to find a job in some kind of tertiary education in Germany as a foreigner, not a German, and also somebody with critical scientific background, like critical psychology. So they read what you're writing, and this not only for foreigners, but both things. For being a foreigner and also being critical scientist, it was almost impossible to find a job. So I had to look around, and so my parents moved to Germany, I moved to Greece to find work. My students now are also looking again to leave Greece because the economic situation is not very good. So they look out and go to Germany again. So you see, migration is a kind of a circle. Every 25, 30 years, it changes direction from somewhere to somewhere. So this is and I studied psychology. So my background, and you will hear it, it's psychology. I'm in Germany, I don't know, as far as I know, here in Brazil, you're following some different tradition. I studied with the old Humboldtian curriculum, which means 4 or 5 years psychology, and finishing, and then which means that what now it's called master was included in the diploma. This diploma psychologist or diploma sociologist included graduate and postgraduate studies together. So you don't get a degree less than postgraduate studies. Now it's divided also in Europe, also in Greece it's divided. You study bachelor and then you study master, which has, So I have this traditional background in what refers to my studies. Today, I will start. There's 2 steps. The first step is a historical, looking starting from the 19th century, when social sciences started to emerge out of philosophy. And so I will talk about psychology more, but as an example. Actually, I will also mention, often say, social sciences, because what I'm saying is relevant to social science in general, and not only to psychology, but using the example, yeah? The first part will be kind of this historical background, and how the project of social sciences is related also to the project of the nation state. So the political project is of constructing society. From mid-19th century, it means industrial society or capitalist industrial society, and how this political process of constructing and organizing society is paralleled and supported, or however we want to call it, from that what we know as social sciences, and how there's a relation between. This is what I will tell. In order to come to my second step, where I will discuss the first part is a more historical, let's say historical perspective, and the second part is more logical. And in the second part, I will try to put in a logical line the arguments of critics in social science, because social science exists, but since the beginning there were not it was not unquestioned. There was not only one. There was critique. Critique was part of this emerging social sciences, and so that, which means that criticizing what is correct knowledge and what is not, it was part from the beginning. So in the first part, I will try to make this to describe this in the historical part. In the second time, I will try to make this critical perspective in a logical light. So, and we will end actually at the point where we will continue on Thursday. We will end actually on the two examples for social sciences. We have these two examples of societies, or of two examples of organizing capitalism in a profitable way, as we have until now, the Fordist and the neoliberal model. And so this is how we will end today, and we will continue on Thursday talking about more on this, or exactly on this historical change, this neoliberalization of psychology or social sciences, and what does this mean probably for our understanding of central categories like subject, needs, individuality, and whatever. Yeah, but this is on Thursday more explicitly than today. Since English is not my first language, yours also not, I think. So I will stick to the text and will add things or explain more, and we can anytime interrupt and ask things and make clear. So English is not our language, yeah. So I will keep and stick on the text. You have it, so that it's for you easy, and for me also either not to lose the ball and not start talking about and then lose the line. And then we can at any moment stop, interrupt, and at some points I will stop and ask you, because there are still problems of translation. So I'm now here 2 months in Brasilia, and in every new university we have been discussing, there were always problems with translation. How can one say what in Portuguese? Yeah. So, and there are 2-3 very important concepts which we can discuss. What could be a good or the appropriate translation in Portuguese. Okay, I put in the beginning of my text, I put a quote from Martin Barrault, from a Jesuit priest and social psychologist who was killed in Salvador by paramilitaries in the beginning in the 80s, 1899, and he was US trained, but he was one of the founders of Latin American critical social psychology in general. So if you go back and look for Brazilian people from critical traditions like Sylvia Lane, who was in USP, they were working together with Martin Barrault until the 80s. And the important thing, this is the reason why I have this quote, is because I like it very much, because Martin Barrault tries to refer. It's not about knowledge and the quality of knowledge and what we're producing. It's not only addressing the society, but he refers this question also to the psychologists or the social scientists themselves. So he said that to achieve a psychology of liberation, which is a Latin American tradition, to achieve a psychology of liberation demands first that psychology is liberated. Must break out of its own enslavement. So which for me, the important thing is that there is no neutral social science like psychology or whatever, which is looking at the world and tries to improve it, but it has to think also about its own condition. So if psychology has to be a liberation psychology, then it has started a liberation with psychology as a professional, a profession itself. And if I may say this, I'm now 25 years in university, or longer, 35, and since the beginning, I'm asking my students, who are usually psychology students, what are we psychologists doing in society? The 99 or 110 of 100 students say we are doing good. What the psychologists what are doing in society, this is something good, which means a very voluntaristic idea of knowledge and sciences. So it depends on my intentions, and it was until now very difficult. It was for me very difficult to address and to question this and think, how about us not to be somebody who solves problem, but also somebody who contributes to the problem. And this is something which is not very easy to understand, not cognitively, but to accept it. And this exactly this double relation of social sciences to society is, as I think, addressed by the quote from Martin Barreau. Psychology has to think first about its own liberation if it wants to address some kind called a liberation of society or liberation of individuals. So let me start my presentation. The first point is, if we look back to psychology, but also to social science, as I said, if I look back to social sciences since the beginning, what we see is that it's a field, a social field of permanent conflicts and battles, real battles. When the effect of these real battles and conflicts is there are winners and losers. And of course, the social point of reference of winners and losers is, for example, academia. The winners are in academia, the losers are out. What you can find in academia means that it has some kind of power, and it is part of the winners. So, and this situation we have since the starting of the 20th century, because in the 19th century there were no really social sciences differentiated, and here we can start to say that since mid-19th century, when slowly, together with capitalist organization of society, then the emergence of and the differentiation of several branches, disciplines of social sciences out of philosophy, it was part at that time. It was part of the putting the question or having the question on table of how can capitalism or this capitalist society or the industrial society, how one can run this society. So what kind of knowledge is necessary to run the industrial capitalist society? The so-called social question. And the social question was an overall accepted issue for all political specters. So it was not putting the social question. It was not a kind of leftist or progressive of some kind of political. It was also from conservatives' perspective, also from revolutionary. So you can find it in Adam Smith, or you can find it in Karl Marx. It was not a part of revolutionaries to put the social question. It was a general acceptance that the new form of society needs knowledge, which has to be produced. And for this production of knowledge, exactly for this, the social sciences emerged out of philosophy and get differentiated. So what we know now after 100 years is exactly based on this, on that social question, which needs knowledge to make the society happy, running, functioning actually. And the important point is that since the beginning, since the end of the 19th century, there were since the beginning there were at least two competitive, let's say, trajectories in this, what kind of knowledge is necessary for running the new society. The one, and I will speak later about this more, but let me say it from the beginning, that and these two trajectories were, on the one side, what we now know as social sciences, and on the other side, it was the other trajectory, which was competitive to the social sciences, were the social movements. The social movements which also emerged from mid-19th century, the labor movement, the women's movement, the youth movement, other movements, they were the competitive other trajectory in addressing the social question, which means from the beginning we have at least two competitive trajectories putting the social questions and asking for what knowledge is necessary, useful, and so on. What we know now after 100 years is actually only the perspective of the social scientists. What we know is social sciences. And this perspective won the fight actually in the beginning of the 20th century with a deal, with a deal between administration, bureaucracy, and this emerging social sciences. And so what we know now after 100 years is that actually when we speak about social sciences, it's a very particular perspective on social knowledge. In this perspective is the perspective of bureaucracy and administration. If you look back 100 years or 150 years, the very strong administrations and very strong institutions in the societies were exactly the basis for whatever kind of social knowledge was organized. Who gave the resources and the money for social sciences? There's in psychology we have this kind of slogan saying, without the First World War and America in the USA involved, we wouldn't have psychology at all, because the First World War, the army was one of the big institutions asking for particular knowledge. The immigration, mass immigration, and the controlling of the immigration in the USA. And so forth, which means strong administrations where the, how do you say in English, what do you say, who is giving the name to the babies, when the baby is giving a name, how do you say, the godfather, or is it godfather? No, the children have the parents, but there is somebody who, after 6 months in Christian tradition, who is giving the name. Godfathers, yes. So the bureaucracies and the strong administration is actually the godfathers for social sciences. They are asking for knowledge, and they are paying for knowledge. And this asking for knowledge and paying for knowledge means also organizing institutions like universities who produce and reproduce this knowledge. So which means that there was a deal in the beginning of 20th century between bureaucracies and between social sciences. And the deal was exactly that you get resources. Some people get resources for research and education, for producing knowledge, but not. But the precondition, the deal is not to address the social question, but to address it only as an issue of individuals and small groups. And this deal, is a precondition for the next 100 years, actually, or up to now. Which means the knowledge production since 100 years is based on this deal. That the social question, which was, again, it was a central issue in the 19th century from conservatives to revolutionaries, exactly this referring to the society and how the society is to be organized. Exactly this reference to the social question has to be put aside, and the only address will be individuals and small groups. So the knowledge which addresses only individuals and small groups, this is the knowledge the bureaucracies actually accepted and supported. And in psychology, we have this very much more central, and the critique on this is to have a science which is very individual-centric. And all the critique is actually about this individual-centrism of psychology. But this individual-centrism has nothing to do with some bad people or some wrong mistakes. It has to do with this deal from the beginning. The bureaucracies are interested in knowledge about individuals and groups and how to manage these individual groups. We will talk later, but I wanted to say this as a historical beginning. So on this historical background, we can say this, the social sciences are a field of permanent conflicts and battles with winners and losers. So, in somebody approaches psychology, it appears to be a certain body of knowledge and know-how. So what we are called to assimilate and to apply. Learning in this means here to assimilate and to apply the knowledge one is getting in his studies in university. The growth and development of psychology, as an example for social sciences again, seems to be restricted in the accumulation of unquestionable real knowledge ready to be used and for particular purposes. This view isn't only very dominant, it transports also a quite technocratic worldview. This the bureaucracy is a particular perspective, political perspective on the society. And this is called as technocratic perspective. It wants to manage the society, actually. This is the duty of bureaucracy. It doesn't want to change anything. The aim is to maintain society, which means maintain also the power relations. Not because of some individual decisions of some scientists, but this is actually the perspective of bureaucracy. Maintaining the functioning of society, which means maintaining the dominant social relations within society. Though, in absolute contrast to this spontaneous image, even a fast look into the history and the status of psychology may reveal permanent conflicts between different approaches from the beginning. There have never existed one psychology. There were always a lot and fighting together, a lot perspectives and understandings and theories. In these different approaches were based on mutually exclusive standpoints relating to ontology of the subject, as well as epistemology and methodology, which means the understanding of what is the subject of psychology, but also the epistemology. How is the relation of the researcher and his or her objects, and also how to research. So, what questions are the relevant questions, and what are the suitable methods to research? This permanent crisis and critique within psychology, as example of social sciences, forms the basic element in the production of psychological knowledge and action for more than 100 years. So we could argue right from the start that critical psychology has always been one of the sisters of psychology, always detested, not liked, but nonetheless a close relative. So we have always psychology, but also a critical perspective. Sorry. So if somebody wants to address and to get to know a discipline, then he or she should think about what is mainstream maybe and what are the critics. And these both sides make the picture. How dominant the dominant perspective may be or not. bearing this tension between a first and a second look at psychology in mind, we may say that the kind of psychology or social science one will encounter, for instance, as a student enrolling in some university, is ultimately a matter of sheer chance. One may have luck or may have not luck. So it's not your choice, usually, what kind of knowledge you got to know. It depends on what kind of power relations exist in the university or in where are you enrolling exist. Exactly articulating this permanent crisis and conflict and critique in the field. From its emergence as a scientific branch, psychology was marked by intense theoretical and political arguments, resulting in winners and losers, in those that found themselves within academia and those that were kept out of it. Thus, we may say that a student approaching the discipline of psychology, as example, comes in contact with each local winner of such a political conflict. And a good example here is, if you go back to the 20th century, is Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud, with whatever one might think or like or not dislike, but Sigmund Freud had a major, how to say, not a mistake, but he did something which was in the new psychology in the 20th century, which was a kind of a sin. Sigmund Freud resisted to put aside the notion of the subject. So he insisted on this perspective of subjects in whatever, however he did this, and this was exactly a relic of the 19th century, which is not bad because it was old, but it was bad because of the deal, as I said before. The deal, the deal with bureaucracy, and exactly could not use the notion of subjectivity in subject. And since Freud resisted or refused to kick away the notion of the subject, so there was no space in academia. So one can use Freud as an example of a loser in this local war, in these wars, and other examples, of course. So what was fitting in universities in this bureaucratic functionalism which won, only this had the place in academia. Whatever approach which did not fit in this functionalism and this bureaucratic perspective had no place in academia. And it didn't change much in the 100 years. With whatever differentiations we have, even the psychoanalysis, which found some place in universities later, if one looks more close to them, they try to adapt. They try to adapt to this bureaucratic logic and on some kind of. So it was not it was not this, like Sigmund Freud, who continued to think of a psychology from the perspective of the subject. So. So these conflicts, in the second step, I want to try to historize and contextualize these conflicts, and from the beginning. And the argument here, or the thesis, is here that society, as a political project, the new society, the industrial society, the capitalist society, as a political project, has its how to say, chaperone, somebody who is following him, as the social sciences. Yes, we have society as a political project, and the social sciences as social engineers in that project. The accepted role of social sciences in this deal with the bureaucracy was to be social engineers, to produce knowledge and apply knowledge as a social engineer in this project of society, which means in that context, in the capitalist industrial society. In order to understand these theoretical and political conflicts, running through all social sciences is very useful for us to have a look at the history of our disciplines. Suitable questions guiding our attempts here may be: whose perspective is articulated in different conceptual and practical distinctions suggested by different psychological theorizing or practice? Or, if you put it in more general terms, what kind of society are we aspiring to? What kind of social sciences and psychology are most suitable to this purpose? The situation we are facing in every historical and geographical space concerning the social sciences is not an automation, it's not an automatism or some historical one way leading towards some alleged modernity. It is itself the articulation of a historical compromise. And this is the first issue we have to discuss in translation, because in Portuguese, compromiso, it's not a compromise in English. And I haven't found any kind of good translation for compromise, which is in some location we said conciliação. Fits sometimes. So just to keep it in mind, what we see in historical articulated are compromises in a multifaceted social struggle or battlefield. From their very beginning, the social sciences, as we know them dominantly in the so-called developed countries at the beginning of the 20th century or more, are part of a huge biopolitical apparatus for the governance of the population. And for this reason, they are supported with money and prestige by the elites, or have been marginalized or even pushed out of academia. And Sigmund Freud is an example for this, being pushed out from academia. The emergence and the development of all social sciences, as it is itself the product of a class struggle compromise, takes the form of a polarity with two major historical opponents. What we know as social sciences since 100 years are on the one side, and different social movements are on the other side of this polarity. This polarity is itself founded on substantial differences concerning the questions and the answers which are viewed as necessary to be pursued, but also being accepted as possible and legitimate to be pursued. The very old questions encountered again and again since the very beginning by social sciences are: who are we serving with our professional activity? Are we serving bureaucracy and state power? Are we serving the existing and emerging social movements? Where let me add here that when I'm talking about social movements, I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm not referring to particular social movements, because this doesn't mean they are not interested, but it's not about particular social movement we can watch in some geographical or political space, but these concrete movements in some historical or societal space are the political articulation of the perspective of social movements. Talking here about this polarity is a perspective on knowledge. The bureaucracy has its own perspective on knowledge, and the social movement perspective is a different view on knowledge. It's not about a concrete political articulation. Of course, in reality, we have political articulation of movement. But what I find interesting and important is that we have bureaucratic perspective and social movement perspective on knowledge, and on these questions: who are we serving with our professional activity? Are we serving bureaucracy and state power, or are we serving this social movement? In social movement means that presupposes that some humans try to improve their life and organize and try to do something. This is a total different way to ask questions and to look for solutions. It's not a bureaucratic perspective. It's the perspective of subjects who want to improve their life and need for this knowledge, abilities, capabilities, and whatever. And these are the opponents. This is the polarity I'm telling. This is from the beginning. And we certainly all know which answer dominated during the 20th century. So during the 20th century, of course, the bureaucracy had the money and the power, and they organized knowledge production from their perspective. And this is what we know now as social scientists and social scientific knowledge in all the different disciplines, psychology, sociology, education, and whatever. But let us have a more systematic look at this argument, making the permanent ambivalence of social sciences between help and control hopefully clear. Both the emergence and developing of social sciences and their internal differentiation into distinctive and self-contained disciplines cannot be conceived as a linear, a smooth process of just happening in the interior of the world as it is organized in the last 150 years. The distinctive social sciences and the disciplines who developed and got the resources to expand in order to deliver specific expert knowledge for the internal organization of the world, as it is divided in distinct geopolitical unities in distinct single societies. Without nation states as the dominant model of organization of society since 150 years, we would not have not only national railways and national post offices, we would also not have national social sciences, as we have. So this idea that every society has its own several institutions on that level. This political project of society, of constructing and organizing distinct single societies as in a hierarchical world system, is interwoven with a scientific paradigm about society and the social knowledge necessary for this. The conditions and relations between these distinct single societies as nation states in a world system are regulated by what Immanuel Wallerstein, a historian, calls a pecking order. Pecking order is the way the chicken organize the relations between them. The stronger chicken are pecking on the weakest, and exactly this is the idea of Wallerstein, saying this happens also in the world system between the different single societies as nation states. There's a pecking order. Being involved actively and prominently in this political project, the emerging social sciences contributed since the second half of the 19th century with their approaches and models to the administration and domination of the population in, but also between the distinct geopolitical entities, the nation states. The permanent task, the central problem, so to say, for the social sciences is herein the regulation and the management of the international and the international social hierarchization of population. The contribution of the distinct social sciences to this governance of the population is always ambivalent and always has a double face. On the one side, the social sciences have to support the social reproduction of the population. This is the help side. And at the same time, they are contributing to the control and the suppression of the population. And at the same time, it's not the good ones are doing the one and the bad ones are doing the other, but this is a function of the bureaucratic perspective. It helps and controls. It helps by controlling and controls by helping. It's important that this simultaneous double function. Let me give an example for this real political interwovenness of the emergent and constituting social sciences. In the quote to follow from the end of the 19th century, from 1899 exactly, the prominent American social scientist, Charles L. This emergence and imposition of social sciences as historical victorious competitors over the social movements in the following short slogans, just to make them clear. Social psychology instead of socialism. This Elwood said this clearly. Or social sciences instead of labor movement. Or reparatory interventions in the social machine instead of emancipation. Or help and control on my way back to normality instead of self-determination. So we see that the attempt, the interest for knowledge is permanent on the crossroad. It's which perspective, actually. What we can see, this means, being permanent on the crossroad means that what we can see is always a kind of political compromise. Again, compromise not in as compromiso. From this historical flashback, I want to keep the following conclusions. Social sciences are permanently at crossroads. What we see as concrete articulation is always a historical compromise, a consolição, I don't know. How it is in Portuguese, however. It's always a historical compromise between social antagonists in struggling for control over society and its resources. Critique is nothing odd, nothing strange in this process. On the contrary, critique keeps alive this double face of every historical, geographical, concrete compromise, articulated as distinct psychology or sociology in different societal contexts. Critique is the lost or the paralyzed eye, if we want to use a metaphor, by the one-eyed dominant psychology. And we know ourselves that we can certainly see something with just one eye, but it's far better so to use both eyes for a more comprehensive perspective. Critical psychologists or critical sociologists or critical education theorists or whatever are much more than alternatives to mainstream psychology and more than a mere competition of this. What is dominant and what is critical is always to be localized concretely, historically and geographically. What is critical at one point can be dominant in another point, and vice versa, with all the negative consequences for the scope of emancipation and self-determination. Even more, critical psychology or critical sociology can certainly be reduced to commodity, confining its use value and being a tool for domination. There is no practical immunity to be bought by conceptual virginity. And every critic, so I can, my beloved example here is my own department, where of course they're referring to Freire, but Freire is really like an ice cream or chewing gum. It's something fancy, something, but what does it mean for Greece? Nobody cares. So it's a commodity. In the academic field, I have a nice wheel from Brasilia and it sounds good. I'm selling this. Some others are selling American fruits or French fruits. So this is the argument here. What is critical and what is mainstream, what is dominant and what not? It has to be historical and political localized. Another example for, if I don't know how many for you are psychologists, is Vygotsky. I had this discussion with other colleagues. Probably tomorrow when in PUCI there are more psychologists, we will discuss about it because there are more on Vygotsky. Vygotsky, in my perspective, has become a chewing gum. Guided by the US, I don't know how many different dominant readings of Vygotsky are, but nevertheless, it's a chewing gum. Everybody is using Vygotsky, chewing at him, and for his or her need or context. Yeah. So consequently, we have to acknowledge that social sciences, as psychology, for example, as they have developed in the 20th century as powerful institutions, professional machines for the biopolitical governance of the population. And we have to refuse, as social scientists, we have to refuse to believe in our own sales promotion, telling people that we are just perfect solutions for their needs and their problems. Instead, we have to realize and to recognize that psychology or sociology or education, being a powerful and efficient link in the societal power apparatus, it is not only a solution for any assigned social problem, but simultaneously it becomes part of this very problem it claims to solve. Sometimes it is more part of the solution, sometimes it is more part of the problem. And this is true for theory and for the practice of social sciences. So this was my first historical, how to say, look at the situation. Second step, I would like to look more systematic on what critique is, and try to identify logical steps or find ways of critique, existing critique in this 100 years social sciences. So a closer and more systematic look on the logical steps of critique. We are at the point in our discussion where we can have a more systematic look on the critiques in psychology, again, as an example of social sciences. It is important to make clear right from the start that the huge variety of critiques articulated is not to be seen as mutual excluding alternatives, nor are the critiques to be seen as being positioned in a moral hierarchy between them. It is much more fruitful for us to see them as mutual completing each other. In the presentation and to follow, I am attempting an analytical and logical order. There is no kind of moral hierarchy between them. The first level, the first step, let's say. The first step is some kind of ethical critique. And we have to discuss about this with Alessandro later, about what ethics and moral means and is meant. So ethical critique, which means it's about subjects using and abusing or used and abused by psychology or knowledge of psychology. And the question is about the political functions of individual practices. So I'm as individual. So critique here focuses on the use, or better, the abuse of psychology's findings and techniques in certain applied fields. For example, in the army, in industry, and so on. And there are a lot in education also. At this stage of critique, applied fields of psychology are put to the forefront and are studied through the respective users or consumers of psychological knowledge. The special feature of this approach is the fact that psychology is studied through the lenses of its particular practical application. The aim of critical studies here is primarily directed to the exposure and the denunciation of the use or abuse of psychology in the services of oppression and domination, as in, for example, psychologists' involvement in the very famous project Camelot, which was launched by the USA, the State Ministry of Defense, and the CIA, of course, during the 1960s, to combat the liberation movements, mostly in Latin America. In a classical study, another classical study, which has been the linchpin of studies that underline the specific alliances between the social sciences and the mechanisms of oppression and power, mostly focusing on the USA, social scientists are directly called servants of power. And the example of Baritz, who was the author, was industry. So the using of psychology, the kind of psychology which was used in the industry, this is caused Baritz to say that psychologists are servants of power. This political ethical critique focuses on the specific subjects that used or apply psychological knowledge and its techniques. The appeal for politicization and use of the knowledge in favor of the oppressed, the working class, and so on, is addressed precisely to these individual subjects. Such appeals silently imply that psychology can be used at will and for different target groups than it is at the present. So, which means everybody can use it as he or she likes. Psychology itself as a science, which means its conceptual apparatus, its methodology, remains outside of a systematic critical analysis, since the application and the use is in the center of the critique. Psychology is a neutral something, and it depends on how I use it. I can use the knife to kill somebody or to cut the knife. This doesn't has any meaning for the knife. The knife is a knife. The second step. The first was the individual use or abuse as ethical critique. The second step is a sociological critique, which refers to the profession of the psychologist as a profession, not as individuals only, and the political functions of this sociological this profession actually. This orientation, the second orientation, extends the horizon of critique beyond the single subjects and users or implementers of the psychological knowledge. Here, the connection between psychology and society is not perceived as independent and free. Psychological knowledge and practice is interwoven with a wider net of societal relations. Starting point is a sociological analysis of the emergence, the constitution, and the usage of these certain forms of psychological or sociological knowledge and practices within the field of society that is shot through with inequalities, with conflicting interests, and with power differentials. This step forward aspires to mark out the double nature of psychology and its functions as a professional branch subsumed in specific societal contexts, like social institutions, like the process of production, like education, etc. The critique at this stage does not refer to possible good or bad intentions behind psychologists, who utilize the products of psychological research for some means which are blameworthy. Instead, it refers to psychology's functions within the particular historical labor division in the societal context. It's a labor division which is addressed on this sociological level, exactly. A critical examination of psychology as a professional branch and its usefulness for the reproduction of structures of power and social inequality is attempted. Psychology, by inventing and producing a body of psychotechniques, as the colleague is naming this, and patterns of normality, has never ceased to be useful and at hand to the repressive mechanisms of the state, or, for example, the army, the penitentiary system, and so on, in terms of oppression, of manipulation of behavior, and the general exercise of social control. In a now classical volume from Basaglia and Basaglia to Italian psychiatrists, the famous contributing writers from Foucault, Castell, Wolff, Chomsky, Goffman, all the hit list of the time, these famous contributing writers pointed to the fact that we social scientists, as social group, rather than as individuals, are experts on and specialists in manipulation and oppression, and are sharing a portion of the responsibility for committing, as Basaglia is saying, peace crimes, crimini di pace in original, peace crimes. We intellectuals are functioning as agents of power, as servants of power, since we hold on the role of offering our expertise in order to secure the spontaneous compliance of the subjects, using a term of Gramsci, the subalterni, the repressed to certain conditions of life. During the late 1960s, psychology students from many different European countries announced resolutions that referred critically to those specific functions of psychology that reproduce the specific structures of dominance and inequality in our societies. The selection of staff and pupils with the resulting exclusion of certain individuals and certain groups from the access to social and public goods was one critique. the taming, the subjugation, and manipulation of the disobedient or unmanageable individuals or groups, the intensification of labor, the increase of the profitability, the resuscitation of health with the aim of reacquiring labor power, and use of social sciences for the needs of totalitarian social apparatuses and mechanisms like psychiatric institutions or jails and so on. These were a list of addressed or to say functions or effects of psychology as a professional praxis. This form of critique contributes to sketching the socio-political role that psychology plays in a specific societal formation. However, critique refers less to psychology as a science and more to the specific societal relations and conditions. It refers to the organization of society, which are ultimately responsible for the use of such a psychology. This is an external critique, external political critique in its address to psychology, and a struggle for better social conditions is proposed, conditions that will favor a different use of psychology as a profession. Therefore, this struggle seems to be led mostly by political subjects and to a lesser extent by psychologists as scientists. This position alone example of social sciences is neutral, but the social conditions are bad. And the social conditions has to change by political whatever fight, and then the better society can use the same psychology for better purposes. Which leads us to the third level, which at that time in the 70s was called ideological critique of psychology, and ideological critique of psychology's conceptions of normality. The servant attitude, which we were speaking before, of psychology towards societal power does not leave the theoretical constitution of psychology untouched. On the contrary, it implies that only a certain scientific standpoint allows for such an attitude. This line of critique is further developed by the so-called postmodern critiques, which emphasize that mainstream psychology is not a mere and immediate mechanism of oppression and restriction of individuals, but we should discern a multiplicity of different shades and of subjugation. Mainstream psychology performs its socio-political function by contributing to the rationalization of the tendencies of individualizing and fragmenting the social. And thus, it contributes to the formulation and the conception of modern individuality as such. Psychology does not merely distort or imprison certain helpless persons through oppressive institutions, but it substantially contributes to the hierarchical positioning of the individual subjects, to the control and to the governance of their agency and their movements. Thus, it constructs or canalizes certain concrete forms or modes of subjectivity. This was a basic critique of postmodern attempts in the 90s, actually, in the 80s in psychology. The ease with which mainstream psychology fights back the critique on the basis of being primarily political and not epistemological intensifies the need to increase the efforts for the exploration of psychology's conceptual armory. Research methods, perceptions of the epistemological subject of psychology, etc. The reference point of critique should be psychology as a science and the specific negotiation of its scientific subject. This view also presumes that the proposition that science is an apolitical and value-free activity is critically approached. Psychology, no matter how it is conceptualized and applied, is political in itself, and it also has its own special means at its disposal because it is political in itself. Critique will remain insufficient should it not include exploration of psychology theoretical possessions. The aforementioned political use and societal functions of mainstream psychology is not an external characteristic that can be added by the outside or can be taken away from some social forces. The functions are made possible by and woven into the specific theoretical constitution of mainstream psychology, which is enclosed in the bourgeois modes of thought and ultimately in the boundaries of bourgeois society. Due to its enclosing in and reproduction of bourgeois forms of privacy, mainstream psychology is still preoccupied with human beings in the abstract. It's still researching individual subjects as these are defined by and confined in the bourgeois forms, that is, the individual subject as a private entity, as a private individual. Since mainstream psychology is precisely not aware of the historical determination and production of this privatism, it identifies private individuals with human beings as the only possible persons to be. It means that a particular historical form of individuality is taken as a general form. The private individual is the individual, let's say. And this is actually a correct reflection of a particular bad reality. It is not a political critique which is added, but it's an attempt to identify some historical particular form of identity, this private individual as a part of the bourgeois society, but the overgeneralization that this historical particularity is ahistorical, is general. Humans are private, as private individuals. So it is not accepting the historicity of this form of individuality. It has to do with this society, and it's useful in this society, in our society. The concealed and underlying anthropology of an abstract and secluded person, an isolated person, can now be understood within the scope of the analysis here. That is, the conceptual reproduction of the abstraction and isolation of individuals and subjects as private individuals is reflecting a reality in bourgeois society. The isolation and abstraction of the subjects from the lived, specific, social, and historical contexts is thus now conceptualized in the theoretical reproduction of their non-social appearance, of their self-denied sociality, as this is defined historically by the bourgeois form of privatism. So, privatism is set as a general ahistorical normality. Thus, the conceptual disjunction and the external contradiction between the individual and the society in mainstream psychology consists in reality of a non-conscious theoretical representation of the real disjunction of the social and private process in bourgeois society. So the reality is how to say, the reality is a problem, but which is correctly reflected. But which means that the conception of the bad reality cannot see that the reality is bad or particular. So it's not a cognitive issue; it's a kind of a unconscious or a blind reproduction of real privatism. So individuals are private individuals, and this is not identified as something particular in some historical particular, but is set as general. Consequently, the inadequacy of mainstream psychology and as well as other social sciences to discuss sufficiently the relationship between subjectivity and sociality of a person is nothing more than the scientific expression of the fact that private individuals in bourgeois society indeed are signifying the negation of the social context and life and live their lives in real, invariable, and unchanging accidental relationships, which strike to them as natural and in the core of a world of contradictory interests. In the context of bourgeois psychology or mainstream psychology, there can be no prospect or possibility for individuals to develop in historical conditions transformed by the individuals themselves. Klaus Holzkamp, a German psychologist, emphasizes that individuals' double character of being a subject of and a subject to the conditions of his or her life. That is, people are the creators of the conditions of their lives on the one hand, but they are subjected to them as well. However, traditional psychology overlooks and neglects the first side, that is the production and reproduction of the conditions of life by the subjects and themselves, and presents their living conditions as given and watertight, as ahistorical. It is thus adopts the postulate of immediacy, as Leontiev put it. So Holzkamp follows the critique put from the Soviet psychologist Alexander Leontiev and also Daniel Usnace, which exactly said that it's a postulate of immediacy. The social conditions are in some way immediate, reflected by in the individual. There is no mediation between them. That is the belief in a direct unilateral influence of the external stimuli on the individual's behavior. In other words, psychology theoretically and methodologically is still falling behind the thesis on Feuerbach, where Marx, against the traditional theoretical materialism, emphasizes on the active dimension of individuals as social subjects that have the ability to transform the world. This third stage of critique is historizing the modes of normality, actually, carries on with the exploration of psychology's crisis, which reached the scene during the first decades of the 20th century. This form of critique, however necessary, is insufficient with regard to the prospects for the development of psychology as a science. Most critical approaches are usually confined to the sociological critique of psychology's functions within capitalist society, while critical assessment of the psychological theories that are already formulated is pursued to a lesser degree. A positive negotiation of the still open and the still to be explored issues within psychology has fallen short so far. For instance, one of the issues that have been studied insufficiently is the actual scientific subject of psychology. What is psychology actually dealing with? What is its real scientific subject? And this is still a very, very arbitrary discussion in psychology. This leads us to the fourth step, so to say, which is going beyond the critique. The last step of critique is going beyond the critique and try to articulate some positive negotiations and some positive articulations of better psychological concepts, aims, and practices, which maybe point beyond all of the existing societies. The argument here is that so thus far, the social sciences are actually following and are chaperones of the political project of society. So if social sciences are to play some progressive role, they have to show also beyond the existing society, and which means the theoretical and practical concepts or practices are necessary, which can be helpful for going beyond the society. And this is the fourth, let's say, step. The previous steps attempted to approach roughly the epistemological confinements of psychology within the limits of our societies. This kind of critique easily leads to a general blaming of psychology as a servile science, which is correct. However, critique will remain insufficient should it not include the exploration of psychology's theoretical possessions, a critical assessment and reinterpretation of the psychological theories that are already formulated. The point here is not only to adding of a political or ethical critique of using psychology, neither the mere sociological critique of this professional branch with our capitalist societies. The transition from a negative to a positive position, from a critique to a positive positioning, from the critique of existing, of dominant psychology to the development of a new psychology is eminent. This is what is the rest, actually. This precisely is the transitional point. Does the researcher confine herself to adding a diverse critique to psychology, or does she aim at its further development as a science? It is quite difficult for one to comprehend the prospects for overcoming the theoretical and practical confinements within our concrete societies without the development of a valid approach concerning its scientific subject. In this line of argument, and if we want to keep on with the dialectics of helping and controlling, then we are faced with two major tasks: to develop a better and adequate understanding about psychology as subject matter, as a discipline, and as a professional praxis. Furthermore, to reflect about the ontological and epistemological potentials and confinements in every historical period. The two major categories of such a historized notion would be Fordist and neoliberal psychology. And very short here, because in Thursday we will talk systematically about this quote. The Fordist psychology of the 20th century, demanding exactly homogenized normality, and by this branding normality, by formulating states and conditions of normality, which are referring to diagnosis, to intervention, and including the normality of psychology, but also that of psychologists as professionals. The double phase of helping and controlling people in the process of their personal development and socialization is, for example, conceived as being part of a social science service to power and bureaucracy, only as adaptation, only as assimilation and subjugation to given normality brands. If you read psychological developmental theories, whatever there are, socialization means adaptation, assimilation, subjugation. There is no, if anybody finds a text speaking about resistance, I would be very happy to have it too. I'm looking, there's no resistance. Human beings are just assimilating, just subjugating, just, this is normality, and adapting. There's no autonomy. There is no resistance to anything. So this is to be discussed in the historical paradigm of Fordist psychology, as with its, I call it homogenized normality as some homogeneity, which is a collective homogeneity, of course. And the normality of individuals is always compared to some collective homogeneous measure. The transformation of our societies towards neoliberalism includes much more than transforming the economies of nations around the world. Not only the working conditions are affected through precarity and austerity, but also new spaces, new contents, and new worker subjects are created and on demand. The transformation of our societies refers to the imposition of a fundamental reconfiguration of our social imagination, impacting all aspects of society's organization, the institutions, the organization of labor, what individuality is, the needs, the rights, and a lot more. Neoliberalization is not economy. It's the whole society, or the society as a whole. As it was Fordism, Fordism is maybe a particular form of organization of labor in industry, but it radiated to the whole society. Gramsci speaks about a new type of man, new type of humans, which are made possible by this new form of labor organization, but also demand. And all ideas of our ideas or conceptions of normality are for these ideas, actually, of normality, historical specific conceptions of normality. So, and the idea here is, which we will talk about more on Thursday, is that neoliberalization means a transformation of all of these aspects of society, including also normality and individuality, and not only institutions and economy. The entire scheme of what and how society ought to look like has been reconfigured from a new psychology for neoliberalism, operating now with what I want to call as differential normality, not homogenized, has to respond to the social demand for new subjects and new subjectivities as clients, but also as psychologists. Not only the clients have to change, but the psychologists are different also. For neoliberalism, here we have to ask in both directions: for functioning, adapting, assimilating, but all in serving the powerful, but also and for fighting for one's emancipation on both directions. Which distinct social sciences are needed now? The same self-contained disciplines as in Fordism, separated in different disciplines, the same with different content, or what else? And to come to my end, there are remaining crucial questions. Even a mere recital, as I tried here, of critical approaches in the last 100 years reveals a vast theoretical heterogeneity of the field of psychology and of critical psychologies, and the existence of directions with mutually exclusive social and methodological orientations. There is no single psychology. Never has been. There are a lot of difference. However, there are crucial questions remaining for us all, like at least two. Who has the need for another or for an alternative psychological discourse and knowledge, which does not render outside scientific research the subject, and does not consent to the confinement and demarcation of the personal to some specialized institutions outside science, like the church, like privacy, like politics, and so on? Who are the social subjects who refuse to compromise with consolidao past here, fits here, I think, who refuse to compromise with the dominant status quo of psychology as profession and as discipline, and who seek out ways to change their own lives and the society in which they live, and need for this different kind of knowledge. So let me stop here, and we can continue on Thursday. Thank you very much for today.
Bom, a gente vai abrir o microfone, então, para quem quiser perguntar para ele, em inglês. Quem não conseguir em português, a gente vai tentar ver quem socialmente aqui faz a tradução para ele. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, translate your question for you. Quem começa? Vem cá pegar o microfone, toma a palavra. Sandra, por favor, se apresentem, digam qual programa, garotas e garotos de quais programas e qual o tema de estudo de vocês. É sempre bom para ele se localizar.
Olá, pessoal, boa tarde. Meu nome é Sandra, sou doutoranda no programa ProMUSP e também sou membro do grupo GPsipolim, né, que é o grupo de pesquisa coordenado pelo professor Alessandro Soares. I'll try to ask him in English. When you are talking about psychology, I was thinking about what kind of psychology you are talking, because in the page, at the page 7, you say social scientists are directly called servants of power. Why? Why? And I'd like to that you give us some specific example to say about psychology as well involvement in the project Camelot. In the project Camelot? Yep, I'd like to know more about this. Thank you.
Let me start with Project Camelo. I can't name examples here, but the project Camelo, it was a huge project run by the Ministry of Defense of USA and CIA in order to combat the liberation movements in Latin America. They try to influence and involve to using psychological knowledge, actually. And as I can't tell now examples, but it's a huge, huge thing in discussion. And the servants of power was an expression by the colleague Baritz, who made described how psychology is used in industry. He was actually talking about psychology in industry, and this was his consequence or his conclusion, that the way psychology is used in industry, it's serving, making the action of human beings there more profitable, and by this serving the powerful. And this idea of the application of psychology in several fields, in education, in industry, in others, in army, always has in mind, or dominantly in mind, the perspective of the powerful, the bureaucracy. I said that in the beginning, said this is the bureaucratic perspective, and the bureaucracy, the administration in society, the institutions have a particular view what they want. They want to pick up the personnel. They want the personnel in the army to be more successful, more efficient. And this is not one can discuss this morally, say this is good or bad, but okay, this is on ethical and moral. But the argument here was that this serves a particular perspective, and this perspective is the perspective of the bureaucracies, the administration. And for this perspective for the administration, exactly for that, the idea of subjectivity, subject, resistance, autonomy, emancipation, there's no need for this. And this is also one reason why since the 20th century, functionalism is dominant. Action means functioning. My action is actually functioning, which means somebody tells the end of an action, and then it's about how fast, how good how can you function in that direction. In education, we have this systematically. The teacher says who is missing and what is missing, and my field of work is learning. And you see, even if asking my students at the beginning of the semester, what is learning for you, for everybody individually, their answers are already cutting off every question about what they learn and how and why they learn. For the answer is only about how to learn quickly, fast, which means they have in their mind, because of dominance of psychology, this kind of psychology, they have in their mind that their self-understanding of learning is functioning. Our action is functioning, and functioning dominated by powerful. And for at least speaking for my field of education, but in industry, in army, in other institutions, it's the same or even worse.
So, do you think it's so difficult to break the system and be a critical psychology, as you're talking about?
After 100 years, it seems, yes, it is difficult. Because, yes. After 100 years, what I'm saying, it's not only psychology, but I'm psychologist, so I'm no better in psychology, but the idea is, this is what I tried to say in the beginning, the idea that the political project of society, of making the society of functioning, was paralleled by a machine which produces knowledge for functioning the society. And this is the bureaucratic perspective. They need a particular knowledge. And I said in the beginning, the opponent, the competitor to this perspective was the social movements. People who want to improve their lives, and for this improving their lives, they need knowledge. The knowledge is different because they have different questions, different methods, and different solutions. But this perspective is very, very marginal, if not totally excluded.
So the better way to start to break this system is walking together with movement.
Practically, I would say yes, but here, since we are in university and I'm a professor and paid for theory work, I would say we have to start to see how what we are producing, theory, concepts, how these are reproducing the power.
He needs to get out.
Let him go.
I will. Okay.
Yeah, let's continue. My argument is it's not a more at this level here. It's not a discussion between you and me or us to go with the movements. It's not going with the movements. It is, it is not going with the new movements. It is the movement. The movements are a different perspective of knowledge and what kind of knowledge is necessary. This is not the moral thing. Go with the movement. Yes, I would say yes. I go with the movements. We were yesterday in occupation in the center, But this is a different discussion. We can participate this, but here we are talking about theory and science and social science and knowledge, And the argument is bureaucracy. Bureaucracy needs a particular knowledge and this is actually a common discussion. In this knowledge is called as Foucault says for governability. It's how about to govern population, and this is not a moral issue. But this is bureaucracy. They want to maintain the system, Not because you as a bureaucrat are bad or morally to question. No, it's this position. The position means how to maintain the system as it is. The teachers, for my students becoming teachers, they serve as teachers, not because they want or don't want. And they serve as in a position from the teacher. The teacher in this kind of organization of school means a particular form of organization of learning praxis. The teacher has a position of telling the questions and the pupils answer, but the teacher knows the answer, and he or she wants to see if the students also know the answer. It's a particular way of organization, and we are in a position in there.
Understood.
Theory
and the practices. It comes together.
My argument is what our duty is as scientists, is to think about what position do we have and how this position we have influences our conceptions, our understanding, that our theory, how we see things, how we see society, and so on. And how do we serve it? Not because we want it or don't want it, not on a moral or ethical level, but because of our position.
O professor falou que tinha que sair para eu continuar. Quem gostaria de fazer uma pergunta?
Oi, boa tarde, Carlão. Eu faço mestrado no programa de estudos culturais. Boa tarde. Thank you to sharing your research with us. A few years ago, I wrote a paper about the huge use of psychologists in marketing, in to sell products and services, and to develop the electoral behavior, including the use of some kind of disturbs to optimize cells and electoral behavior.
Yeah.
Can you tell a little about it? Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's a good, thank you very much, because it's a one more example for the question of the colleague before. All this market and this electoral, it's actually one more field, and a modern field, let's say. It was not existent in the beginning of 20th century. The army, the industry was in the beginning, the education, but these are new fields of application in order to direct the behavior of groups. Nobody's interested in what we need or what we want or not want. It's about how to make people functioning in a particular direction. And this is for the very specific knowledge for this necessary. And
it serves a power.
It serves a power. Yes, 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 of course. Yeah. So this is a good, new example of serving the power, yeah? But to serve the power, again, in order to serve the power, it's not because you're bad or the psychology is bad. It can serve the power by very specific understanding of what is action, what is human action, for example. Human action is functioning, yeah, and what is needs, what is individuality, and again the subjectivity, which was important idea and concept in the 19th century psychology, not in the 20th. My example with Sigmund Freud is Freud refused to push away the notion of subject, but which means he refused to reduce action on functionalism. But this was a presupposition for psychology to be servant. They were not servant because some psychologists say, I'm a political decision and they have this moral or ethical decision. No, they did, the most psychologists or sociologists do this by using concepts and concepts which are particular, have a confined, restricted. For example, again, restricting human action to functioning, which means you don't have to ask anybody. Nobody in this language, nobody has to ask the pupils in the school, why are you learning this? No, nobody in school talks this with the pupils. Why to learn this and what to learn? Learning is only about how to learn, fast, how to vote, or how to consume. What if you need it or not, don't need it, yeah? And the good thing is the market is a good, and the electoral field is a good example that, because I don't know how far, maybe it's, all this the last 50 years, we have a big, how to say, a big interest in qualitative methods. The interesting thing is that using qualitative methods and not only quantitative didn't came from critical psychologists, not from criticizing this, but came from market and from electoral, from this field, yeah. In order, because they're accepting that people in late capitalism, the products are very diversified, so the needs in the consumers are very diversified consumers, so they used quantitative methods doesn't work, so they developed the qualitative methods, which now a lot of psychologists at least think the issue is a methodological issue about qualitative or quantitative method, but the qualitative methods are how to say, they develop much more in the market psychology and electoral psychology, yeah? And this is interesting. I think interesting how methods may look like progressive or critical, but it's not. It has to do with It had to do with differentiation of the field of application of in your example, market and electoral behavior. Yeah, but it's about behavior. It's not about action.
It's about manipulation.
Yeah, but it's manipulation means how I can, direct what you're doing in some directions I decide. I'm not talking with you, and I'm not participating like not like the teacher is not participating with the pupil. What do you want to learn, and how? Why do you want to learn? But only how to make the pupil learn. So this is the idea of serving the powerful. Yeah, because the powerful, the bureaucracy is giving the questions. And the trio, if we go again to this movement perspective, very bureaucratic perspective, the movements having different questions, the different methods are appropriate, right, and different solutions also. The solutions for bureaucracy is compliance, consuming, but for the movements it's different. They want to improve their life, so they have to participate in what is a good life. What do I want to change? Not only how, which would fit in the bureaucratic perspective. Yeah?
Alguém mais?
Oi, eu sou a Wendy, eu sou de GPP, caloura, entrei agora. I'm Wendy from Public Policy, so I was kind of lost in here, but I really loved. And my question is like, you talked a lot about how the normality and how psychology can be bad for the society, and how we all roll up together in this society, like liberal society. And I had a thought like, how does how intrinsic is this in the society? Like penalty systems, like manipulation, all of that, but also how in our day lives, like Theodore Adorno, the cultural cultural institutions, like the control of the masses. I think I never thought that psychology could be used for the bad, and your research is such interesting for that, because it really shows how the people can control other people with something that we created. And how do you see that? How was it to perform this study, being a person studying psychology and seeing how the bad can be in all the places in society?
I see this as a comment, but I didn't understand
Oh,
a
the question, sorry.
No, the comment is okay. No problem.
No, like the question is, how do you see yourself inside the psychology, in the kind of the bad stuff and all of that? How do you see yourself being a part of it? Like not yourself like individual, but the person studying psychology, being the one that's like, whoa, this that I'm studying is what is causing the bad stuff, or something that could help the bad stuff.
Thanks. I think this question is not a question only to psychology. This is a general question to anybody in our society doing anything. So, and the interesting thing I find is that it's time to put this question also to social scientists, because 100 years, even in the majority of critical psychologists and sociologists, they don't put this question also to themselves. So, and my argument was here that the bureaucratic perspective means a double, helping and controlling all the time, simultaneously. Not the good sociologist is helping and the bad one is controlling. Not the good psychologist is helping. No, serving the bureaucratic perspective means both. And unfortunately, I can say from my professional that if you ask 100 psychologists, I would say almost nobody would say that we are also a problem, but part of the problem. And I would be very happy if more psychologists or more social scientists would accept that what we are doing and how we are doing is also part of the problem. That we are not to help people solve their problems or to be a vanguard or whatever. No, we are part of the problem, which we try to contribute to. And what does exactly that mean in the practice? It has to do with the field, yeah, in the clinical field, in the educational field, in the industry field. But to accept this what you formulated as a problematic, yeah, because. And I think the social scientists are not at the moment now very, very, very little, if at all, accept that there is a thing we have to think about.
Do you think the like putting in the third person, like, oh, society is the problem, like not the individual itself, like me as a teacher being part of the system, inside the bureaucracy, all of that is something that we can like not reverse, but like, do you see it an alternative? Not what do you see as alternative, but do you think it is possible, like as a Marxist, we have hope. I think I wrote the stuff that you wrote, and I'm like, certainly you've got the hope. You studying the bad stuff. I think that's the most hopeful thing for looking for an answer. I think. Do you really believe that's possible, or is like a study that you like and you specify in it?
Again, I would say that yes, there is, but there's no more hope from us or in our field. The same hope, it has to do with labor, with work, and again, I would say we would have more hope if more social scientists and more psychologists accept that they are not only solution, but usually because this is unfortunately the last 100 years looking at critical social scientists and psychology, they see themselves still as somebody who solves problems, yeah, as a vanguard, as somebody more religious like Jesus Christ coming from outside and saving the people and then leaving again. But I think I would say if we arrive at a level that the social scientists accept what they're doing as labor and also being labor work, it has to do with they have to deal with the same contradictions as every other working person, with different kind and so, but to see this as work and not as something whatever from above, then it would be much better. And the solutions are the same as in other working fields, or to organize and to try to get a collective consciousness of what we are doing and how we are doing and how what we are doing and how we are doing is also harming us. I said a little bit about to say it's this normality is affects also psychologists. The psychologists are not only helping people to get normal with whatever it means, adapting and assimilating, it also affects them. But we don't think that we also normalizing ourselves or assimilating and adapting. We think we are neutral. We are engineers. We are engineers, and we are acting to like a building, make a building here. I would, as a psychologist, I would not be happy, politically happy, if it would be self-understanding that we are normal workers and have to do with the similar contradictions. So this tomorrow I will talk in Puki, and next week with the colleagues in psychology department of USP, and it's about Marx and alienation. And this is exactly the social scientists speaking about alienation of others, of workers. And I know German research of psychologists and sociologists going to factories and analyzing the workers there and the class consciousness and about alienation. And I think if that level the psychologists also apply to themselves and think about the alienation our alienation because of our work and how it is organized. And so then I hope that tomorrow or next one we will discuss with the colleagues there more. Yeah, and alienation is not only a problem of our clients. Oh, then what's about our alienation? And if we find a better solution to deal with our alienation, maybe then we can have a better idea for our clients, yeah, or for our whatever, the people we are working with, yeah.
Thanks a lot. You answered my question perfectly. I love it.
German, Alemão, or Griego. Greek also, yes. In Greek? In Griego? Yes.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Kathleen. I research about the curriculums of psychology. I research about the curriculums of psychology and how they affect on Black students. And my question is, if you see something or someone as the local winner on psychology courses today,
I didn't understand you. Someone?
sorry, if you see someone or something as the local winner in psychology courses today, if you see the
It's a
critique
winner. It's a winner.
is as the local winner in
Uh-huh.
psychology courses today, if you see the critique as something to us, like a toy to us to break up with this.
About the winner,
Yes, about the winner.
I think this is your job to think about, because you have to think about the winner here, not here in the room, but the winners in Brasilia. I can maybe think about the winners in Greece or because I'm not competent to think for Brazil, but I think it's important to look the local winners means the winners in some social field where we are living. Of course, we can think about more general winners, but which are not Brazilian or not Greek or not German or so. But let me I have to think about. We have to think about who are the actual winners of in psychology now. But I would have to think about it, yeah, and to say something. But again, I wouldn't. I'm not sure that I have an idea about Brazilian context or Latin American context. The things are different here, and the different traditions here in the mainstream psychology, but also in critical traditions. So it's a different field, yeah. I'm now 2 months here. I'm talking with lot of colleagues who are also critical, but there is a lot of things to hear and to learn, because things are here different, yeah. And in Brazil is so big. I don't know if there's a Brazilian winner in general, or yeah, maybe one should be smaller. Yeah. And I'm not sure I understood the other part. There were two things you were mentioning, but there's about the winner I understood, but the other thing I didn't understood. You said two things.
Yes, if the critique it's a way to us like break up with the local winner.
Critical?
The critique
Yeah.
is a way for us to break up with the local winner.
I would no, I can't say this, because we have to look who are the winners and the losers in the context. We have to agree about the context. Are we talking about Brazil? Maybe it's Brazil the correct field, or is Sao Paulo or some other, and then to talk about who is the winner and the loser there, and how to deal with that. It has to do with a concrete field, I think. First, we have to identify and to agree about what is our field, what we're looking at. Yeah. For example, it's having Greece, which is much more smaller than the Brasilia. Greece is half as Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo is twice as Greece, two times Greece. In Greece, what I think it's the winners are bad copies of American psychology. Yeah, bad copies, but bad copies. Yeah, so there's no relevance to no thinking about what is relevant for Greece. what is particularity in Greece? What are the issues in Greece? And how can we use what kind of theory? And this is, I think, the winners in Greece. Yeah. So just copying ideas, theories from USA, from Great Britain, or France or so, and bringing in and applying it. Only, and again to the what is the young lady? What she said. Oh, and the only motive for this is reproducing the working power of the psychologist, because I'm working and I need money to pay my rent and to live. This, which means the reason for them to think about what they're doing is, if I'm successful, I'm getting much money or enough money, this is the only reason. But what I'm doing and what effects has what I'm doing, this is not part of the discussion. And this is, for me, it's the core of alienation. You don't think about the content of your work. You don't think about the effects of your work. You're just doing this because this is how you earn your money. And this is true for workers in factory. This is true for psychologists. This is true for professors. This is true for everything. Yeah. But we have to discuss this concrete. Yeah. In the concrete field. Yeah. You already said you started with saying that you're studying curriculum for Black students or so. This is, yeah. I cannot contribute nothing to this, because for Greece this is not an issue, not at all. Yeah, you are the expert, would be the expert to answer your question. Yeah, yes. Okay.
Coragem. Aproveita, o grego está aqui hoje não está aqui amanhã, né? Então está na quinta-feira, na verdade, né? Perguntas? Você está com cara de pergunta, vai lá. Não, a vergonha. Claro, não, pergunta, mulher, para a vergonha. Vai lá, ajuda aí. Vai lá.
Em grego? No? In Greek. But please, modern Greek. I don't understand old Greek, only modern. He understands modern, ancient Greek, yeah? Not me.
Oh.
He.
Okay. I'm really nervous. Sorry. My name is Ingrid. And I'm studying sustainability here. Well, my question is something like this. I have wrote it. If we are so coercive beings, and since we are living in this phase of capitalism where neoliberalism is so strong, and it takes too much time of us, and as working class people, I'm concerned about how can we engage in movements. We don't have enough time to make things like this. And I was thinking while you were speaking, it makes sense for us to create spaces inside institutions to use this coercive power that we obey as social beings to create those spaces to innovation, to not innovation in a capitalism sense, but to social experimentalism, to create something new. I really want to know if it makes sense, and if something like this exists beyond social movements, but inside institutions. That's it. Oh, thank you. Okay.
I don't want to say much about neoliberalism, because on Thursday we will discuss systematically. The only thing which I want to say is, I think from my perspective, one thing we have to start to think neoliberalism not as a worse capitalism. And this is actually one, if I may summarize my whole work about this, that unfortunately a lot of critical progressive leftists, whatever you want to say them, looking at neoliberalism, they continue to be very conservative, lamenting about neoliberalism as it some worse capitalism, things becoming worse, 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 worse. And this is, I think, a trap, a big, big, big trap. Yeah. So neoliberalism, even for capitalists, not only in for just even neoliberalism is a new historical mode of organization of capitalism, like Fordism it was, which needs and produces and presupposes different forms also of subjectivity, individuality. And this is not, it's not only becoming worse and worse and worse and worse. And this is a part of in the direction of going beyond to find out what are the positive in what are the opportunities in neoliberalism which have not exist in Fordism, for example. And then we can think about what is not only what is becoming worse, which is true, a lot of stuff, but that this verse is not an expression of the opportunities of neoliberalism. It's, if I may say this, this is the political, the whip the power is using, yeah, in order to make it more difficult to do things, yeah. And of course, the slogans are precarity and austerity, but precarity and austerity are not characteristics of neoliberalism. There are characteristics of the power who wants to impose in neoliberalism. But we can discuss about on Thursday more systematically. I just want to say, and we will say more on Thursday, that this is part of our weakness of not understanding what is happening, and because we are very conservative, which means lamenting, and this, and for me, this discussion about neoliberalism started with my former students of mine who were, and then who started to work in as a young psychologist in NGOs in Greece, and then there were, and we met and discussed, and so, and there were a mix. They were, of course, very impressed about the situation, which was shit, the pain, precarity, and austerity. But there were also some kind of sensation, some kind of impressive new things, and they try to find what is happening there, which is also impressive and is attractive. Yeah, not because nobody is attracted from precarity and austerity. Yeah, and so, and this was the starting of point. What is new? What is the new there? New also in our sense of emancipation and so. Yeah? And this is what we have to do to look what is the new? What is a new opportunity? The other stuff what you said, I would agree that inside institutions to organize space, to start to not to follow, not to just functioning, but to think about what we're doing, how we're doing, how do we things understand, and how can we organize this? I think this is a classical but very important way to do this. So I just say yes, yes, yes. Yeah, there's no, yeah. And we're not doing this. We are much more, and again, looking in my profession, they have no, very, very little interest in consciousness to think about what we are doing as psychologists. They're so much impressed about the good we are doing to society that there is little interest to think about that. How do we contribute to the problems? And not only how do we solve the problems, because this is, we believe in our self-promotion. The colleague talked about market, yeah? And the psychologists are the first who are believing in their own reclam. And I think this is not a sign of knowledge and strongness. It's a sign of blindness, yeah? We're selling some product and believe it, the first one who believe are ourselves, and not only psychologists, I think. But I'm humble and talking about the psychologists, which I know it's my field, yeah. But I'm sure sociologists would not be better, or anthropologists, or educators, or whoever, linguists, or whatever social scientists are existing, yeah. But this is their job to do. And I like the social experimentalism. I think this is very important, yeah, to try more social experimentalism. Yeah, in one German philosopher called also this movement stuff as real experiment in German, which is experiment but also real, and he used this expression of real experiment. You're trying something, but it's something real, yeah, which means we're intervening in some field or some initiative, but this is an experiment, but it's also some real, yeah. So social experimentalism is something I think we forgot too much the last 40, 50 years. This was part of in the late 19th century and 20th century. This was actually a big issue for all the movements. Yeah, try different. Yeah, from this, I grew up in Germany. There was the labor movement organized a parallel sports education, because not waiting that the capitalists will do something, they try to organize themselves sports. Yeah, and then all the youth movement, women's movement, whatever, all the movements. Yeah, not just complaining, but try and collect knowledge, accumulate knowledge. What happens? What works? What does not work? What are the conflicts? This exactly this perspective of we need knowledge. We need alternative knowledge. Yeah, and exactly this is the social movement perspective. Yeah, not only the movement, but there's a different perspective on what knowledge do we need for improving our lives, and not wait the bureaucracy. Bureaucracy has its functions. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
How to think about psychology in performance society.
So how to think about psychology
in performance society? This capital, this idea in performance, it's impacting the culture in neoliberalism, cultural society. Desse lado não teve nenhum corajoso, nenhuma corajosa. Parece que toda a intelecção curiosa está do lado de lá da sala, né? Depois dessa pergunta, eu quero ver gente daqui perguntando, hein? Já levanta a mão que eu passo o microfone.
I thought you want to answer this question. Ale, I thought this was a question to yourself.
Yeah, you.
No, I thought you put the question to yourself, not to me.
No, for you, but because
I can start, but then you can continue, because I don't. To be honest, we have to talk about not what you mean, but about performance society. Yeah, there are so many nice words the last 50 years about how to call society, but I'm not sure what is really the substance in there, because performance society, I can imagine this as something good, also in the perspective of emancipation and in so from a critical perspective, but I can also imagine this as something bad, because it's in capitalism, which perform yourself means try to sell yourself, yeah, in particular way. It's a contradictory issue, yeah. So in itself, I think it's part of the positive, could be part of the positive in neoliberalism, in appreciating individuality. So, and giving opportunities to show, and not only to show up that you're a man who is a normal man or a normal professor, but give more space, yeah. But in capitalism, this means at the same time to try to make a product of this, a commodity, yeah. In this contradiction, I would think. Yeah. In psychology, I don't know. I think the most of psychology in this performance society is what the colleague says about in marketing. Yeah, it's like the marketing yourself. Yeah, contributing to marketing yourself as a commodity, and yourself also as somebody who is. I am the product. I am the producer. I am the one who is selling. Yeah, but myself. So far.
Deixo, claro que eu deixo.
Hello, I'm Bruna. I'm in the Cultural Studies Master Program. I organize it. I try to organize here, and I graduate in psychology.
In?
Psychology.
Okay.
Um,
In USP.
Hã?
In USP?
No, em UFG, Universidade Federal de Goiás.
In UFG? In Goiânia?
Yes,
In
yes,
Goiânia?
in Goiânia, no, Catalão.
Another campus.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. When Carlon was speaking, I remember how psychologists have been positioning themselves on social media, like this, almost like selling a product or a solution to people problems. And I was thinking about this because when I think about the psychology, specifically clinical psychology, I feel like clinical psychologists seem to serve more and serve in the senses of following this bureaucratic logical.
Say it again.
Bureaucratic.
And the bureaucratic logic.
Yes. And have a perspective of adapting the individual.
Yes.
My question for you is more of curious about this, because is it possible to think of a critical clinical psychology? Critical clinical psychology. Because this, when I think about this, I think about this perspective of adapting.
My diploma is in clinical psychology, but I never pursued this because I always had a very strange relation to this. So I'm not the best one to answer, but what I can tell is there is in critical psychologies, there is a attempt to think about the clinical setting. Yeah, it's some literature about this stuff, but I personally, I'm still skeptical about this critical clinical psychology. Yeah. How far it's possible, because adapting, but also because this is my opinion, and I'm not expert or much in this, but because I think the clinical psychology, whatever the practices are existing, they're reproducing this a very private form of power relations, yeah, and in private, in a sense also of isolated, yeah, 1-2 persons or even groups and so on, small, and this, I think this is a very particular social form of reproducing adaptation, yeah. So this is my personal problem with being skeptical with clinical. I can't see how can somebody address this, and if somebody has to change this social form of very few individuals with very clear power relations. Yeah, because and whatever I see in I don't know a lot, but the things I see, I'm very skeptical of what is existing. But I have a lot of comrades and colleagues who are in the clinical field because they have to earn money and they have to live, and thinking about how to organize critical critical clinical and how to see it. But I couldn't say it's look this and this and this and this and this. There is. So if yeah, I'm and what I wanted to say, that this adapting, it's in, but critical, to being critical, or on the other side, cannot mean not to contribute to adapting, because we have to function in the society. We have to function. The point is, my argument was that reducing all of our action only to function, only to functioning. So without adaptation, in the sense of becoming again able to live, to organize your life, to live your life, there is no transcendence or going beyond. There's no change, no emancipation. So these contradictions will remain also in the critical clinical way. The point is how to organize this praxis, this social praxis, particular social praxis called clinical praxis. Yeah? And one other point, just thing to add is that, again, historically, in the last 50 years or 60 years, with the boom of clinical psychology, a particular understanding of clinical is dominant. If you go back to the beginning of the 20th century, when it began, it was not that dominant. For Piaget, Vygotsky, some sociologists, they're also talking about clinical, but their understanding of clinical has not to do with normality and bringing somebody back to normality. It's not a pathology. But clinical means starts with intervention. The clinical is, Piaget, Vygotsky, and other sociologists say the clinical is referring to an intervention. And an intervention in a unit. The unit can be an individual, can be a family, can be even community, and even organization. So the clinical is not referring to pathology, where somebody has the privileged knowledge of what is normal and what is pathological, but the clinical is referring to intervene and how to organize intervention of how somebody can improve the development, yeah, without having the privilege of knowing what is without this dominant idea of pathology, which has to be corrected. And this is, in my skeptical eyes, is a big problem the last 50, 60 years in the clinical field, which is nice for the clinical psychologist. Because I know better for you what is, and this idea of pathology is also nice. But in the social sciences, since the beginning of 20th century, it is not the only one. And actually, it was not the dominant one in the beginning. Yeah. And so, if you see my position is called clinical social psychology, and it's not about the clinical; it's about the other clinical, the intervention, social psychology as intervening. Yeah, not about social psychology, who is a clinical in the modern dominant sense, or about pathology to be corrected. Yeah, but nobody understands this. This difference, because clinical is so dominated by this pathology idea that somebody tries to correct a pathology. Yeah, but from this view only from a skeptical. I'm still have the diploma in clinical psychology, but I'm very unhappy and unhappy but oh yes, I'm not working. If I had to work and to earn my money as a clinical psychologist, I don't know what I would say or yeah.
Just information, we have a group, the name Cuidar da Profissão, que são, they are psychologists that they talk about the democracy. And last year, they organized some group to defend the democracy. So you have psychology, clinical psychology that thinking the other way. And I think is if you think about the history in Brazil, you can see more classical psychology that work individual, but we have some group that work in different way, like o Cuidar da Profissão. Se você entrar no CRP São Paulo, região 6, você vai encontrar o grupo que vai discutir dentro dessa perspectiva crítica, pensando o sujeito dentro da história. Então, é um processo sócio-histórico. E, inclusive, na Universidade de São Paulo, tiveram professores que abarcaram a questão de trabalhar contra ou se opondo à extrema-direita. Né? Então, a gente tem grupos que que houve essa organização ano passado para poder defender a democracia, né? Então, a gente consegue encontrar. You can find some group that we work in different way.
I mentioned before Basali, and as far as I know, the democratic psychiatry, which is Basile called his attempt to reform the psychiatry in Italy as a democratic psychiatry, defending or restoring a democracy, actually.
Yep.
And as far as I know, Brazil went through a reform where this critical psychiatrists were influenced. And in Brasilia, where I have been, the colleagues there are Daniel Goulart, who is in the UNIB, he's doing about mental health and subjectivity.
Yeah. Also, we have some psychology that where they work as a psychology who helps some student from periferia, like Educafro. Educafro is an institution. They work with students from peripheries, from different way. And they have some psychology this moment to work with this student to prepare to get the university
degrees.
And they talk about some politicals, so you can find.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure there are initiatives. Yes, here local initiatives.
Alguém mais levantou a mão? Vamos ver. Okay. Ninguém?
Meu nome é Pamela, eu sou psicóloga, mas eu sou estudante de têxtil e moda. E eu sou psicóloga voluntária do Núcleo de Atendimento, de Acolhimento Universitário aqui. So, my name is Pamela. I'm a psychologist. I'm studying fashion and textile here, second year, and I'm a voluntary psychology also in a project here inside. Yeah. My question is, thinking about like artificial intelligence and the use of data, what's your opinion? How could the critical psychology or even the social science, thinking about the contemporary world and how do we use it? And considering what you said about helping and controlling, how do you think about it? What's your opinion? Yeah, the position of the social science or the critical psychology, and the use of data, and I'm trying to bring the question, but it's like this. If you have something to share about what do you?
I don't. Yeah, artificial intelligence is something very en vogue and discussing. I think there are new conflicts and tensions produced by artificial intelligence. Some are interesting. Some, for example, the artificial intelligence software gives a kind of tools where we can handle a lot of text, yeah, a much bunch of text. But actually, this is stealing, yeah, and it's not producing something new. This is the one thing is you can handle a big amount of text, which is very, very difficult to do in other way. So this is positive in the sense it's maybe helps us to do something. But on the other side, there's the confinement, the restriction that this is only good for if it's about to reproduce something, and can be a trap if you use somebody in thinking or in order to substitute the production of something new to think, for example, it's not helping thinking, it's helping to make you make an essay very fast, but you will never understand nothing with this. Yeah, so I want to say it's a tool. It gives some opportunities, but also with some confinements, and both try to keep both things in mind in the auction, it's at least a minimum has to do, because it's an issue. Learning is about new things. And with an artificial intelligence, not helping producing new things, yeah, like thinking, yeah, like thinking, understanding, yeah. But I know in my university, you can write very fast an essay with zero work actually, with using some software, yeah. But and you can deliver it. And from my perspective, from my side as a professor, I don't know how it is in USP, but we have to deal with a huge amount of students. So it's a ping pong, yeah. The students are pretending of working, and we are pretending of reading and examining what they're doing. Yeah. So as the students are producing with some text, so I see and think, and so actually it doesn't help the process of learning. Doesn't help at all. Yeah. It can be so on a level of operation, you can use to get an idea of what is common, and then you don't have to spend that much time in order to get an overview of what is existing, but you will remain on what is on the mainstream, what is existing already, what is the dominant text around, yeah, and you will never get to the next step, which is about understanding something, which is something the new learning. You will not learn anything, yeah? And this can be a trap. I can imagine in my institution, as in Greece, in the universities with this masses of students, that you can finish your degree and deliver your thesis or your written work. You can do this and get them, but this doesn't mean anything actually. And as Chomsky said, it's not artificial intelligence; it's artificial plagiarism. It's actually it's stealing, yeah. It's nothing to do with intelligence, yeah. But it's a new contradiction and a new conflict we have, you know. So it's here, yeah. It's in this world. It's now here and very easy to use, yeah.
Fé, coragem, vamos lá. Tá no fundo. Ninguém? Bom, algumas coisas importantes só para organização do curso. Semana que vem até passou um QR Code aí, todo mundo se registrou no QR Code, se não tá aqui com a Vitória aí. Outra coisa importante, quinta-feira, então, a gente vai fazer no auditório do lado, no pequeno do lado, aqui no vermelho lateral. Hoje estamos no verde, na outra vai ser no vermelho. A gente aqui vai ter outra atividade nesse aqui, então a gente vai estar no mesmo bate-canal, só que do lado, tá? Auditório vermelho na quinta-feira. Sexta-feira, na PUC São Paulo, ele vai fazer uma outra conferência sobre marxismo e alienação. Na PUC São Paulo, na sala 334, às 14 horas. E na segunda-feira, ele vai fazer uma conferência na USP, no Instituto de Psicologia. Então, se alguém aqui gostou de ouvir ele, além de fazer o minicurso, quiser continuar discutindo com o Athanasios, tem ainda a nossa quinta-feira que vem do nosso curso, a quinta próxima agora, depois de amanhã, e a oportunidade de vê-lo na PUC e na USP Butantã. Speak about speak about the program for the
yeah. Portuguese. My
yours.
Portuguese is perfect.
Yeah. Que mais que eu ia dizer? Eu ia dizer uma outra coisa que era importante. Tá quem quiser ouvir de novo, tá no canal do YouTube, do Gepsipolim USP, né? Tá lá no cartaz, vocês podem acompanhar, quiser retomar. Então a gente vai aprofundar um pouco mais essa relação com o liberalismo, né? O liberalismo na quinta-feira, acho que é uma coisa que apareceu muito nas perguntas aqui, né? De vocês, mas acho que é uma coisa que é bem importante pensar acho como um balanço do curso mesmo, são essas expressões que são as relações de poder na produção da subjetividade, né? A gente vai vendo que essas relações de poder, elas vão gerando uma fragmentação da própria construção a possibilidade de produção do coletivo, da solidariedade, da ação para a transformação, né? Então, acho que como resultado de uma consciência solidária, né, do reconhecimento do outro, acho que essa também é uma das questões que Athanasios vai abordar na quinta-feira, né? Então, um pouco mais aprofundadamente, né? Então, acho que a gente se vê, então, na quinta, Auditório Vermelho, e passo para o Athanasios para ele dar uma finalização, né? Finalization this conference now about the next part. Yeah? Ninguém mais quer perguntar. Última, vamos lá. Tá bom.
I don't know. I don't know. On Thursday? On Thursday, we spoke at the end a little bit about Fordism and neoliberalism, and then on Thursday we will more systematic speak about this transformation of neoliberalism. Actually, what does this mean for psychology, for social sciences? This is a continuation, yeah. Microphone.
Thank you. In this context, that the critical psychology is I understand that trying to dialogue, to maintain or to keep a dialogue with sociology, anthropology, and political sciences. I remember the last book of Beck about the control, the over control of state. And now listen your speak. This idea, the over control, over tourism. By the way, I'm Carlos. I'm doctoral student in PhD program on tourism. My focus is on ontology and epistemology of tourism, and trying tourism. In this new idea, the over control, over tourism, overeating, and overpopulation, how the critical psychology is positioning, how this current is positioning their speech, the idea of inside or I trying to find the word, but the idea is how critical psychology is positioning their contribution for these social sciences in this global discourse. Because in my opinion, nowadays we have no a dialogue. We have a global war of narrative, a global war of discourses. But in this this kind of everyone speaks about many topics. How this critical psychology is a pointing of the main idea to contribute to the discussion.
But which discussion?
Discussion, how understand what happened in the world right now. Gramsci speak about the idea, how one idea could be put in the common.
I'm not sure if I understand. Hmm? Oh. I'm not sure I understand. I can say what the critical psychologist so try to do, but I don't know if this and this is I don't know how the critical psychologists contribute to the discussion about the world. Of course, yeah, the critical psychology tries. This is what they try to see what kind of how in the concepts, the theoretical concepts, and in our practices which we are doing from whatever field, how is the individual, the society, the relation between individual and society uh, conceived? How to analyze the political grammar of the theories and the practices we are involved. So, and psychologists, as a psychologist, for example, in the clinical field or in whatever field one is working, and to try to understand what kind of theories and concepts are used, and these theories and concepts, how they are conceptualizing individuality, social relations, society, in order to make this communicable, and in order to overcome this imposition from power. So what is right and what is correct, it's imposed like in the school. The teacher knows what is right and what is wrong, and the pupil has just to absorb this, and this is the knowledge, and then go on and the critical moment is to against the power relation, so to say, is to try to reflect on how are we, what is the political grammar of the concepts we are using and the practices we are doing. And this is in very short the duty for critical psychology. So in the context of the discourse would say how is the in such a discourse about the title of which is in the title of the book of Ulrich Beck, which I don't know what he wrote now, but one would also again say, if Beck is writing about over some population, over what, and to think about how this talking and thinking about the world in that way, what does this mean in terms of reproduction of power, and what does this mean in terms of emancipation of individuals, and so on. And so this would be the task of a critical psychology, to be to criticize or to be critical about all these things we are using theoretically and practically. Self-reflection and about the concepts and the practices we are involved in, and in all, with, of course, with the interest of emancipation or self-determination against reproducing power relations, which we are doing, not because we are bad or we want or morally not good people, but because we are involved in positions. I am professor, and as a professor, I have to do things, and not because I want it or don't want it, but because as a professor I have to do some things. For example, to evaluate my students, which I don't like at all, but I have to do this. And what does this mean? What does this mean for my what kind of theories I'm producing, and about individual and society and relations? This, yeah. This I would say about critical psychology, but I don't know. Yeah, about the world, I feel more what it is. It's a yeah.
Maybe in the most simplest way.
Huh?
It's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you too. Microphone. Diego? Yeah, please.
Ah, bom, nos vemos então na quinta-feira agora. A gente vai mandar um material por e-mail de um outro texto do Athanasios, para quem quiser dar uma olhada também, já para a discussão de quinta. E acho que é isso. Muito obrigado. Nos vemos então na quinta-feira, às 2 da tarde, no auditório. Thank you, Athanasios.